Hello to all of you future Canadians. Kyle Broda here from Integra, Canadian Immigration Services. And I wanted to reach out and talk about Canada's immigration opportunities because, as you may have heard, the Canadian government is being really aggressive with bringing in new, amazing Canadians. The government targets are what we will look at in this video. And I want you to think really about how it relates to you and your upcoming Canadian immigration journey. So when we think of your Canadian immigration journey, we're always thinking of two big ideas. Now, on our side as regulated Canadian immigration consultants, we're thinking of a million things for you. But really, it all relates to these two elements. Now, one of those elements is whether or not you match up to one of the nearly 100 Canadian immigration programs. If you match up to several, well, we want to see which one is the best fit for you. All of this relates, of course, to your integration into Canadian society. When I say integration, I don't mean just showing up in Canada. I mean, in the future, are you going to have an amazing job? Are you going to have amazing friends? If you're coming with your family, are your kids going to be happy in their new school, in their new neighborhood? Your spouse, will your spouse be happy here as well? Are you going to live here for 2 years and then go back home or go back and forth? Or are you going to love living here so much that you'll even stay for winter? That's what we're always thinking of. So we're always thinking of long-term, how you can best integrate. And a lot of people forget that part, right? Because you're probably concentrating so much on the immigration options that you're maybe not thinking quite yet about the future. So what we will take a look at is how to correlate these two elements with what the government has released as their immigration targets. All right, so you and your family might become Canadian this year. It's pretty exciting. And you will be, well, I guess our country and our citizens and permanent residents +1. You +2 if you're coming with maybe a spouse, maybe your kids as well. Amazing. So when we think of the current population of Canada, well, it's about 38 million who are here. Now, when we take a look at the government's immigration targets, it's always really, really interesting because Canada's growth relies quite a bit on immigration. Now, it's about 1% of the population, and that's what the government sets as the immigration targets every year. So when we break this down, so number one is you're looking at these numbers. And a few years ago, if you remember from 2018, there was this huge announcement by the government that they are accepting 1 million immigrants over the next 3 years. And it was worldwide news, really. And now the government has released, well, the new targets, and it's even more. So it's amazing because when you think of the world right now with COVID, with everything like that, and a lot of governments shut their doors to immigration or reduced their immigration. But here in Canada, our government is, I think, very immigration friendly, of course, as we are mostly, so it's supposed for Canadians. And those targets increase. So it must be one of the only places in the world with such an increase, which is, I think, pretty incredible. Now, when we dig deeper into how this affects you and your immigration journey, well, when we look at the targets within that general immigration target, we can see what type of immigrant has the best opportunity, I guess, to become Canadian. And you can see that it is mainly through the economic programs. So we'll talk about that a little bit here. We will talk about those in depth in other videos if you want. I mean, let us know in the comments if you would like me to talk about those programs as well. You can see we have family in there too. That basically means if a Canadian marries a person from France or Philippines or Mexico or another country, well, the person can be sponsored as a spouse, right? So that's what the allocation is for that. We have refugees, protected persons. So that's when you're thinking of like Syrian refugees, people in war zones and that type of thing. It doesn't mean that the government is looking for 60,500 refugees. It is that they've allocated the resources and everything like that for that amount. An agency. So that's a bit of a different one. That's usually if there is a very difficult situation in Canada, the government can accept a person very occasionally. Now, we're not going to talk about these ones too much because they don't really relate to the clients that we serve. But for refugees, for humanitarian, compassionate reasons, those are really, really, really extreme circumstances. So be aware of that. Okay, when we think of the breakdown of these numbers as it relates to Canada's immigration targets, well, nearly 60% of the immigration targets are related to economic programs. So what are these economic programs? There's a lot, and that's really the work that we do, is we will take a look at your education, language, work experience, your goals for coming here to Canada, where you want to be in 5 years, career-wise, everything like that. And we try to match you to the perfect program for you. If there's not a program that is a good fit for you, we'll tell you right away. So the government is, of course, it makes sense as well for the government's immigration targets, right? Because they want people who will come to Canada, get jobs easily, integrate, of course, be happy, and stay. So that's why they focus on economic immigration. You can see the subcategories in here. So you've got FSW, Federal Skilled Worker, Federal Skilled Trades, Canadian Experience Class. All of that is through Express Entry. Now, Express Entry, we will talk about this in another video if you want. And that is, I would say, the #1 immigration strategy for a lot of people because it is an incredible program, really. It's simple, it's straightforward for the right person, of course. And I mean, a lot of it relates to your language exam score, but for the perfect candidate, it is the perfect program. And the government sees that too, because they're increasing those numbers quite a bit. SUVSC, so that is the startup visa and the self-employed program. Those are more entrepreneurial programs. They're not too popular, but it might be an option for the right candidate. Caregivers, so those are like the heroes of Canada these days. And there are more and more and more health-related immigration programs. So that is something to think about if you're a nurse, a caregiver. That might be a great option for you as well. The RNIP and the AIPP as well, actually. They're both provincial-based programs where it is basically a group of provinces working together to try to get people basically to fill jobs in those provinces. So they're places that people usually don't go to. Not because all the places are amazing, really, but just people kind of look at a map and they say, hey, I want to move to Toronto because I've heard of Toronto before, or it's a big city, or maybe you have a friend in Calgary, so you want to go there. But these other programs are really, really, really friendly, and I think they provide a lot of really great sort of bonuses because it's all about matching workers with jobs, really, for those two programs and for a lot of programs. So those are great options to explore as well. PMPs, so those are the provincial programs. And again, more localized, specific immigration, matching the perfect person with the perfect community in the perfect province. And of course, Quebec. So we are, of course, accredited by the Quebec authorities as well to represent you. And we're based here in Quebec as well, actually. And again, it depends on the program you're going to immigrate through, what you qualify for, what gives you the best opportunity for immigration, but also for, of course, long-term integration. But we would look at Quebec as an option for you too. And for the family reunification programs, well, again, we've got lots of numbers because, of course, the government understands that people immigrate here and then later on want to sponsor their parents, their grandparents. People immigrate here and then maybe 3 years later meet their spouse who is not Canadian. So you can sponsor your spouse, of course. Maybe that spouse has children. Great, they can become Canadian too. Other times you have Canadians who marry someone from another country, or non-Canadian, I should say. And same thing, right? That would be under these numbers over here. It's not common, or I don't think it really ever happens with spouses, dependent children, or anything like that, where they would reach the maximum and then cancel applications for that. So you wouldn't really worry about that. For parents and grandparents, the system is a little bit more like a lottery. But again, I think Canada is very, very, very friendly with parents and grandparents being sponsored, and is really one of the only countries in the world to do this. So we've got these very, very, very aggressive targets for immigration, and how will the Canadian government be able to, I guess, get 1.2 million more Canadians over the next 3 years? So the system for immigration changes all the time anyways, right? But the government is very, 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 I think, assertive in looking at the realities of Canadian society and Canadian immigration and doing things to help future Canadians and current Canadians, I guess, as well, right? So these are just a couple little things that they've been doing. One is there is a new program that's released that's going to accept 90,000 new Canadians. So that's about a quarter of the target really for this year. And we'll release more information on that one. It's going to begin tomorrow, actually. And we expect that the government might even implement kind of more programs like that in the future. So they're often related to Canadian experience and that kind of thing. So it's really pretty exciting, I think, for all of you out there. If you're even living in another country, of course, and you're just thinking about coming to Canada, it's pretty exciting to see how flexible the Canadian government is with helping you reach your goal. Part of it is, of course, opening new programs like they're doing. Part of it as well is improving current programs. So the second headline over here is just from a couple days ago too, and it's about caregivers. So here in Canada, I mean, caregivers are angels for us, right? Health-related occupations in general have a lot of immigration opportunities these days. It's more and more really as the months carry on. I think everyone recognizes the incredible work that health-related professionals do. So the immigration programs are reflecting Canada's need for this. And there is, of course, the caregiver program. There are other programs as well, but they're even increasing the funding for these programs, increasing the speed of these programs as well, just like with family. So if you previously, a few years ago even, for people who sponsored spouses, the timeline was pretty long. It was years sometimes that people would wait for an answer, really, for their permanent residency. And then that was reduced a couple of years ago to about 6 months in a lot of cases. And sometimes it's even faster. And look what the government says. They want to go even faster. So again, increasing funding for these programs is amazing. Increasing the speed at which these programs work is, of course, incredible. And Express Entry is the last one I wanted to talk about here. So Express Entry had this historic draw where they accepted more than 27,000 people at once, which is incredible. So they accepted everybody in the Canadian Experience class. The minimum score was 75 points. And that means basically anybody in the Express Entry pool of candidates received an ITA through the CEC if they met, of course, the requirements of the CEC. So it's incredible for the government to do that, to accept more than 27,000 people at once. So it's really something. And then in April, we had a big one as well of 6,000. So the government is increasing these numbers. I don't think there's ever been really a better time to immigrate. And for all of you, even though the world is different now. Canada is changing as well, but I think immigration-wise, Canada is becoming friendlier, I guess, and more open and more assertive with, well, helping all of you become Canadian. So what can you do to become one of these 1.2 million new Canadians? For us, book a consultation. We're here for you. What we want to do is match you with a perfect program. If there's no program for you, hey, we'll let you know right away. If there is a perfect program for you, great. Let's take those next steps. All right, everybody, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. And I look forward to, well, welcoming all 1.2 million of you.